Hi, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a quick update on my 9812 valve. I just installed a three-piece exhaust manifold. I purchased it from Diesel Auto Power. And bottom line up front, the reason why I installed a three-piece exhaust manifold is because the factory exhaust manifold will shrink over time and could break the ears off the head. And if that happens, um, I pretty much have to get a new head. And so I basically bought a three-piece manifold for preventive maintenance purposes. It wasn't for performance gains or anything like that. Nothing to do with that. It's just strictly preventive maintenance. But since installing it, I have noticed a few things, and I'll get into that. But basically, it was just because I didn't want to, replace my head in case the ears were broken off. But anyways, so here's the factory exhaust manifold, and you can actually see where it began to shrink, right? As the exhaust began to push its way out towards the edges. I mean, you can see it right there, right? In the middle, it's fine, right? But as you get towards the edges, you can see the exhaust was pushing its way out to one side, right? So this is the factory exhaust, and I was lucky that none of these bolts broke. And what I did was 24 hours prior to removing it, I soaked the bolts with PB Blaster, and I let it soak overnight, and then the very next day when I went to remove it, they all came out pretty easy. So I was lucky there. Here's just some closer shots of this is number 6 and number 5 cylinder. Exhaust ports, right? And this is number 1 and number 2, and you can see where the gasket is not even, right? And you can see where the exhaust began to push its way. You can see where the manifold itself was shrinking, right? And as a matter of fact, some of these bolts were kind of bent as well. So I'm really glad that I took care of this now before waiting. And as the center cylinders are the ports, right? Exhaust ports. So anyways, here's the new exhaust manifold. This is from DAP. And if you look at this manifold closely, you will see he's got these blank spots here, there, some on top, right? Another blank spot right there, as well as you see AK. AK. I actually don't know what that means. I didn't bother to ask. But like I said, when I called DAP, they said that they are the suppliers to a lot of companies out there that sell three-piece exhaust manifolds. So if you look at different companies like Proven Power Driven Diesel, I think that's Power Driven Diesel. Their manifolds that they sell is actually a DAP manifold, and I know that because I called DAP. That's what they said, right? Could be wrong, but that's what they said. So, and even Power Driven said that they don't produce their own manifolds; they outsource them. They get them from somewhere else. They wouldn't tell me where they got them from, but if you look at the ones on Power Driven, it has the exact same markings, right? And they come from DAP. As far as ATS, I'm not sure, but I don't know if DAP supplies ATS, but don't quote me on that. I have no idea. As far as BD Power, I think BD Power, I think they make their own because theirs looks different. But anyways, so originally I was going to go with BD Power, but I didn't go with BD Power because they, after reading online, a lot of their manifolds would come loose, right? Like some of these end pieces would just separate from the centerpiece. And I called BD Power about that. They said that's normal. And they said they do that, they leave them loose. They're not, sealed together, these pieces. They're just loosely put together. They said because after the first 2 or 3 heat cycles, it will then seal itself. Along with the soot combined with the heat and the expansion and contraction, it will seal itself. I was like, oh, okay. But I didn't really like that, the idea of that. And I have seen online where a lot of BD manifolds, well, not a lot, I would say, there's been a few forums out there that say, whether it was BD or ATS, but I think they're mostly BD, that they tended to leak at the joints where they're put together. So I didn't like that. So I went with DAP because the center section, what they do is they preheat the center section and then they press fit the outer sections together. So they seal it from the factory. and then they test fit their manifolds on an engine. So that's great. So that way I know when I'm getting a manifold from them, it'll fit, it'll bolt right up. So anyways, the removal of the factory and the install of the new exhaust manifold, pretty self-explanatory. You got to remove the turbo. You don't have to, but it will make things a lot easier if you remove the turbo. Then, sorry, someone, I got some lawnmower going outside. Let me just let that pass. All right. So you remove the turbo, then you can get access to the bottom bolts a lot easier on the factory. On Baltimore, remove the factory exhaust manifold, install the new the new DAP or the 3-piece exhaust manifold, reinstall the turbo, put everything back together. I am pretty self-explanatory. The gaskets I use were a multi-layer exhaust gasket, and then another turbo flange gasket from DAP. So everything went in easy, no issues. After about a few hundred miles, I plan to re-torque everything, and then every oil change, I'm just going to kind of check, because these, over time, these exhaust bolts, they do tend to back out due to the heat cycles. So I will at every oil change or so, just kind of re-torque everything just to make sure. But yeah, so have I noticed anything? Performance gains? Well, the truck seems to, it's a little smoother, if that makes sense. Power comes on a little more immediate, and I also removed the turbo silencer ring, right? So I took the retaining ring out and then the silencer ring out, and wow, I can really hear the turbo whistle now. It's a lot better. Sounds really good. But let me see if I got any more pictures. That's just some close-up photos. But yeah, overall, pretty easy install. I actually did a video after I did the install, so this is everything button backed up, but I was kind of in a hurry when I did this video, so I'm not going to upload this one. But you can see everything all button up. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned, but the DAP exhaust manifold does come pre-drilled for the EGT sensor, so I was able to reinstall my sensor, which is great. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm really happy with the product, and if anyone was going to buy an exhaust manifold for their Cummins, I think DAP is a good source. You could use BD or ATS or power-driven diesel, but chances are DAP is the supplier. And you can call them about this. That's what I did. And the thing about DAP is that they were a little bit cheaper, right? So if you get it from, let's say, power-driven, you'll spend, especially if you want it coated, right? It'll cost you like $520 or $550 and above. You can get it bare, which would be like $399, but if you want it coated, like I did, it'll cost you upwards in the $500+ range. This manifold was like $440 or something. So save a little bit because I bought it from the actual manufacturer, and it's coated, so it looks good. I know over time it'll rust anyways, but right now it looks good. So, but yeah, happy with the install, and see y'all in the next video.